I want to be clear at the start. I'm not asking you to accept a belief. What I'm sharing is how I arrived at a conclusion through lived inquiry over many years. For much of my adult life, I was asking one fundamental question. From a theological perspective, what is life? I didn't begin inside Christianity. In fact, I spent several years exploring outside my home religion, trying to understand existence, meaning, consciousness, and purpose. I explored several major frameworks, including science of mind, Baha'i teachings, and Buddhism. Each offered insight. Each explained parts of reality well, but none answered the question absolutely. Something essential was missing. And then, in 1988, a friend urged me to look into the Urantia book. I approached it cautiously, not devotionally. What surprised me was this. It didn't dismantle Christianity. It affirmed Jesus without institutional framing. More importantly, it addressed life itself in a way I had not encountered before. That was the first step, not the conclusion. Over the next 14 years, 2 additional works entered my path. That is, Power versus Force by David Hawkins and A Course in Miracles. These texts came from entirely different origins, different authors, different contexts, and different audiences. And yet, something unexpected happened. They converged, not in language, but in direction. Each point towards truth as the stabilizing principle, fear as falsehood, and love as alignment. Here was the method I kept returning to. Remove authority and untruths, and see what still stands. Compare ideas across unrelated sources. Strip away fear and the modified incentive. Observe outcomes, not claims. What holds up through this, without coercion, endures. So when 2020 arrived, it didn't create my conclusion, it confirmed it. What I saw wasn't primarily about health, it was about causation and how biology was being framed, and how fear is assigned a driver, and about how a model, not life itself, becomes the controlling narrative. What stood out consistently was this. Human physiology behaves according to internal conditions, not external enemies. In particular, the balance of acidity and alkalinity in the body emerged as the keystone. Not as a fringe idea, but as a unifying principle across independent lines of inquiry. That realization wasn't separate from my theological work, it was consistent with it. Life expresses order when internal conditions support it. Disorder follows when those conditions are violated. That pattern holds theologically and it holds biologically. This is why the Truth Center rests on 2 foundational principles. First, a theological understanding of life, conscience, and voluntary alignment. And second, a biological understanding that places internal terrain, including physiological pH balance, ahead of reductionist causation models. These are not separate ideas, they converge. So my conclusion is simple. When deception, coercion, and fear are removed, what remains is the requirement to live in truth, voluntarily, from within. That movement toward alignment is what I call coming into the light. Not sudden, not mystical, and not imposed, but a definitive process. You don't need to agree with me. My invitation is simply this. Don't accept conclusions, but test processes. In the next episode, I'll show how the conclusions in this video is embedded within Scripture. Particularly the idea that the kingdom of heaven is not only imminently in process, but also present and participatory. Truth is freedom.